Good morning. It is a great morning on the south side of Columbus here at the Reeb Center. I want to thank Allie and the entire team here for hosting us for today's exciting announcement of the community coming together to support our neighbors. I want to take a moment to acknowledge our host, Allie, and the entire center staff, which is just one of the many incredible organizations that have been actively engaged in our community before, during, and since the height of the pandemic. I'm grateful to have Council President Hardin and Councilmember Favor here today. I want to thank the directors that have worked so closely on this work. I see Kim and his colleagues here from the Department of Development, Director Stevens, Director Lombardi, and the Finance Department, Christie Angel and the Ywca. As I mentioned during my State of the City address, we're committed to optimizing and prioritizing our resources to target and address our city's greatest challenges. Opportunity Rising is a roadmap for this important work. It embraces the promise and the power of equity to improve quality of life and dismantle racism in our community, including among our guiding aspirations is the strong and sincere belief that every resident should be stably housed and prepared for success in the workforce. The funding we are announcing today takes us one step closer to realizing those aspirations in meaningful and tangible ways. To start, we're devoting additional resources to tackle homelessness and the lingering economic fallout of the pandemic, with a special focus on uplifting our Black and brown neighbors. These neighbors were disproportionately affected by the pandemic in a number of ways, particularly with regard to homelessness. Data shows that 62% of the individuals who took advantage of the emergency shelter system during this time were African American or Hispanic. That's why we're allocating $5.4 million for the Community Shelter Board. This organization is a player in the stable housing arena thanks to their homelessness prevention network. The funds we're announcing today come from the city's general fund and are in line with funding for the Community Shelter Board that we've made in the past. Additionally, we're dedicating another $4.5 million in surge funding from our American Rescue Plan allotment to several local shelters, including the Ywca, Southeast, YMCA, Mary Haven, and Faith Mission. Anytime, and you all are probably tired of me talking about this, but anytime we're talking about the American Rescue Plan, we have to pause and thank President Biden, Senator Brown, Congresswoman Beatty, Speaker Pelosi. They made sure that resources came to local governments directly to invest in our community's greatest needs, to build a pathway for a dynamic and inclusive recovery. And so today I thank them again. There are different priorities in different communities, but our neighbors in need, based on the recommendations from Christie and her colleagues, the Recovery and Resiliency Advisory Committee, we believe that investing in our neighbors now is the best way for us to move forward. Not only will these dollars help to address recruiting and staffing challenges for these organizations, but they'll also enable these groups to better help our neighbors experiencing homelessness and other financial obstacles. Finally, we're allocating $4.4 million in continued support for more than 40 human service agencies that were originally selected to receive funds as part of a competitive grant process back in 2019. This includes Goodwill Columbus and their career planning and credentialing program, as well as the Academy for Urban Scholars, which provides customized education and professional training for Black men to help them excel in in-demand occupations. But it also includes funding for programs that seek to address multiple challenges at once. Take, for example, Family Center Safe and Sound, a high-quality child care program sponsored by the Ywca for homeless children who are as young as 6 weeks old. By focusing on the unique developmental needs of each child while helping them cope with various traumas associated with housing instability, their mental, emotional, and physical well-being remain a primary focus as they receive the skills and knowledge needed to thrive in kindergarten and beyond. Infant vitality and childcare, job readiness and workforce development, all of these issues and more, as well as the agencies and organizations working to address them, will benefit from the funding they receive as part of today's announcement. City Council will consider the legislation authorizing these funds on Monday evening. At the same time, we're committed to improving and re-envisioning our processes moving forward. Continuous improvement. That's what government should always be about. This commitment is reflected in Recovery and Resiliency Advisory Committee's final recommendations, which called for increasing city support for local human service organizations so they can continue to grow their capacity. Using $5 million in American Rescue Plan dollars, we are kickstarting a new 3-year competitive grant process, and we'll begin accepting those applications next month. This support will focus on promoting infant vitality, reducing unsheltered homelessness, and providing housing stability for immigrant and refugee households, doubling the annual allocation for these groups. Again, would not be here today without the American Rescue Plan. In total, all of these dollars are going where we believe they do the most good, in the day-to-day lives of our neighbors who are experiencing great hardship. We can't become America's opportunity city unless we first become America's equal opportunity city. We owe it to each of them to do what we can to improve their circumstances and open up new pathways to opportunity, resiliency, and prosperity. A great partner in this work and many of our goals with Opportunity Rising, please welcome Council President Shannon Hardin.
Well, thank you, Mayor, for your leadership and for bringing us together today. Certainly thank you to the Department of Development for their work in processing and keeping the relationship and the proximity to these organizations that have served and are serving our community so close to the city. Also want to thank and recognize my colleague, Councilmember Favor, Chair of our Health and Human Services Committee, my friend and mentor, Christie Angel, and her agency, the Ywca, and certainly Allie for all the work that REEB does in our community. But I also want to take a moment to recognize the work of Michelle Heritage, who announced yesterday that she would be departing from the Community Shelter Board at the end of the year. Michelle has been a long-time advocate for people living in poverty and a trusted expert in the field of homelessness. So I want to sincerely thank you. Please help me in thanking her and congratulating her on her next. I was at the community meeting the other day on the south side of our town, just around the corner, with Councilmember Favor and with Christie. A gentleman spoke there about his experience being homeless. He talked about working to stay warm over the winter and how even though he has a housing voucher, he can't find landlords to rent to him. These are the kind of stories that are becoming all too common because of our housing crisis. And while structural changes like rewriting our city's zoning policies are critical to deal with the issues long term, community organizations need assistance now. That's why Council will consider these funds, approximately $14 million, this coming Monday for human service organizations and shelter providers. These organizations have been dealing with a surge of longer stays in their shelters, putting a greater stress on the entire system. There's also new dollars to specifically support nonprofits that support our most vulnerable residents. This will be a new competitive funding process that the mayor just talked about, utilizing $5 million in our ARPA funds in 2022. As the mayor said, this is directly in line with recommendation number 15 from the Recovery and Resiliency Report to increase funding for our human service organization partners. These allocations and decisions will prioritize organizations focused on infant mortality, homelessness, and housing instability within Black and brown communities. These are important investments, and I want to thank Chair Favor for advocating for this and leading our Health and Human Services Committee and for all she does, because like I said earlier, all of these things are connected. Our housing crisis, our shelter issues, making sure that we're able to support babies and people in need. And I'm just really proud of Councilmember Favor's leadership and working with the mayor, the administration, and our amazing human service organizations that serve our city. It's my great pleasure to introduce Councilmember Favor.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, Mayor, Council President Hardin, Christie Angel, to Michelle Heritage, Tony Collins, and so many other of our health and human services leaders. From the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you. You all stepped in and filled gaps when we were unable to do so. And you continue to work in a collaborative fashion with the city. And I just want to say thank you for the work that you continue to do on behalf of all of our residents in the city of Columbus. To Director Stevens and his team, thank you for working alongside Columbus City Council and for all of the contributions that you continue to give. My name is Shayla Favor, and I have the honor of serving as the chair of Housing and the Health and Human Services Committee. And Council President Hardin is correct. These two committees are connected in so many ways. And we saw those, the way in which these committees interact and how the discrepancies within them have been shown throughout the pandemic. And so it is my task to figure out ways to continue to work to resolve the issues that continue to plague our communities, specifically our communities that have historically been disenfranchised. So today we come together with another challenging year in which we've battled COVID-19, an economic downturn, and a housing crisis. These challenges continue in 2022, and it is evident that today we have an even greater responsibility to not only stabilize families, but ensure resources are invested back into the community that will promote health, safety, and a sustainable future for all Columbus residents. Access to safe, affordable housing is a leading detriment of income, wealth, health, and overall quality of life. I am proud that our city has prioritized strengthening families by investing over $19 million in equity-based organizations, tackling homelessness, infant mortality rates, and increasing housing stability for immigrant and refugee households. This funding, which includes an additional $5 million investment in human service grants, is going to have an incalculable impact on our city and continue to support our partners working to protect the most vulnerable among us. Organizations such as Charitable Pharmacy of Central Ohio, Mary Haven, and the Ywca, just to name a few, have taken extra steps to help families get back on their feet by preventing evictions and providing necessary health care at no cost. I have seen firsthand just how effective and life-changing the resources provided through the human services grants have been for residents. It is so much more than just money. It's education, access to experts, free health care, quality food, and so much more. Just as we were able to distribute over $12.2 million in emergency rental assistance through the Stable Housing Initiative last fall, these human services grants will allow us to continue serving women, seniors, immigrants, and refugees, and other hard-to-reach populations. This pandemic has had a significant impact on the health and the well-being of many vulnerable groups in our city, and it will continue to do so. And we know that women are disproportionately affected. That is why we continue to be intentional with our funding and our support, focusing on women, people of color, and minorities who have been affected most by the pandemic and the fluctuating economy it has brought. If these last few years have taught us anything, it is that the work is far from finished. With this tremendous step in the right direction, we must continue to distribute funding to the organizations that are on the ground and strengthen the investments in our community. While this is a large investment, we know that the need is even greater. This is only but one tool in our toolbox, and we must continue to be even more creative with the resources that we have. And so I truly believe that the first step towards building healthy communities is to prioritize equitable investments in areas with the greatest need. I continue to look forward to working with the mayor, community partners, and other leaders in the city as we innovatively build out a competitive process to provide additional support to our human services partners. And finally, I just want to take a moment again to thank our human services organizations across the city for their resilience, their hard work, and their strength over the past few years. The pandemic exacerbated many needs to which you all have answered and provide vital services to our residents. I know that this hasn't been easy, so again, thank you for all that you continue to do on behalf of all Columbus residents. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Christie Angel with the Ywca.
All right, I'm the short one here. Vertically challenged. Thank you, Councilmember Favor. Thank you, Mayor Ginther, Council President Hardin, Allie, one of our women on the rise. Good to see you. And thank you all for being here today. I stand here really on behalf of a few organizations, because I have job ADD, I guess, and I can't just figure out how to do one thing. So, you know, I'm standing here as a part of the entire homeless system and permanent supportive housing system. Thank you again to our leader of Community Shelter Board, Michelle, for your 12 years of tireless work, your partnership. My ride or die, you and I, all the time. Mike Stevens, you can start answering our calls again. And I'm also here I'm also the chair of the Human Service Chamber. So it's a pleasure to be here on behalf of our Human Service Chamber and all the 140 organizations that are members. And then I'm also the chair, or I was the chair, am I still the chair? Of the Recovery and Resiliency initiative. And so it's glad to see that we're checking those initiatives somewhat off the list, although, you know, we never completely check them off the list. But before I give my remarks, I do want to have my team come up here because it's important. At the Ywca, teamwork makes the dream work, and you do not do this kind of work alone. I get to be the cheerleader and the one who, you know, makes the calls and has the conversations, but Sonia Todd, Regina Clemens, and Adrienne Lee Garland, so Sonia is the director of our Family Center, which is out on 5th Avenue, and it's the homeless shelter for families. Where are you? Adrienne Lee Garland runs our downtown building, the Women's Place, but it is permanent supportive housing for women, 91 women who were formerly homeless and who all have some type of disability. And then Regina Clemens, who's directly behind us, behind me, joined us recently after being kind of a leader in many nonprofits, including the Impact Community Action Agency and Community Properties of Ohio. She's now our Chief Program Officer, and so she leads this work. And we all stand here on behalf of really our colleagues who especially do the work of shelter and permanent supportive housing. It is some of the most challenging work that you can do in this community. And why you probably are thinking, well, there's plenty of jobs, there's services like the Human Service Chamber and all of our members and what they provide. But when someone does not have a home, it is challenging to get up every day, get your kiddos to school or yourself dressed and ready for the day, and to think about going to work when you actually don't have a home, and it's more difficult to find housing in our community right now. And I know that the leaders here understand that and know that. That's why they're making the investment today, but that's also why they're thinking about the broader investments that the mayor mentioned at the state of the city around housing, because as Council President said, these things are all connected. We are seeing people stay in shelter longer. So our length of stay, as CSB measures us, and it should be, what, 22 days, Michelle? Our length of stay has been in the 80s. 80 days in shelter is much too long. Shelter is traumatic. No matter how nice and comfortable and well-intentioned we do it here in the Columbus market, it still is challenging. I ask everyone to think about being in shelter. You're told when your meals are going to be served, when to get up, when to get dressed, when to leave, when you come back, when you have dinner, when the lights are out. When you want to get a bowl of popcorn and have a soda and watch, all the Chicago shows like I do every Wednesday night, you can't do that in shelter. Or you're doing it from your phone in a room that is probably half the size of a hotel room. There's no going to the refrigerator because you want a bowl of ice cream. There's no, I feel like getting up at 10 in the morning and sleeping in on Saturday because, I want to watch cartoons and I want to hang out. You don't have those luxuries. And those are just a few things that I kind of think about every night when I'm at home and I'm going, yes, that's right, to the refrigerator probably too many times or whatever it is I'm doing, right? Or getting up to work out on Saturday morning and doing my thing, right? That the folks at our shelter, they can't do that. Or they can, but it is constrained. And it is because, shelter, some people think, well, why do you have to have all those rules? Well, when you have congregate setting in a pandemic, you also have to have guidelines and rules of engagement to keep people safe and healthy during this time. And this team has been amazing during this time. We have seen, all of my colleagues and I, across the system, we have seen higher incidences of mental health decomp and instability. We've seen higher incidences. We've all had more suicides. We've had more drug overdoses. We've had more drug use. We've had more violence. Not because people, not because people are bad, but because people have been isolated, and we isolate. And we're still isolated. We're still wearing masks. We still have all the COVID protocols that many have lifted. We still have to have all of those because we're in congregate setting. And so the work has been difficult. And as I wrap up my remarks, I also want to say the people who do the work, there's an army of people who do this work, right, that come to support us every day. Masking, gloving, hand sanitizing, doing everything that they need to do, but they come every day because they know that this is important work, and they're not paid very much to do this work. And so the investments that the city will be making in our work today not only goes to support the people we support, but it also goes to support the team of people, right? So that they stay with us and they keep working with us, and that they don't want to leave and go take that other position, and they stay committed and dedicated as we get through this and get on the other side of this pandemic, but also as we get on the other side of this housing, I'll call it a crisis, that we're in. And then I also want to say, to landlords, You heard the story from Council President Hardin about the man who we heard from last week who no one will accept his voucher. Landlords are not accepting check payments for rent. Landlords won't accept vouchers. Landlords will not rent to people who have more challenging housing histories. So an eviction kind of wipes you off the map of trying to get a unit. And if you have a large family in this community, it's very difficult to find housing. And so people are stuck in shelter because not only a pandemic, but they're also stuck in shelter because it's difficult to find landlords who will rent to us. And so we know that there is a lot of work that we all have to do. And Ywca Columbus, our board of directors, and I know all of the colleagues that I stand here, who aren't here, but who are here, maybe virtually with us, we're all committed to doing our part across the spectrum of housing, not just in the work that we do, but we're also committed to doing our work to bring more landlords into the system and more housing into online, so people have a place to stay that they can afford and that is safe and decent. I just can't thank you enough. You all know how excited I am about this. It really means a lot to Ywca Columbus and the board of directors. Janelle Coleman cannot be here with us today. She's our board chair. And of course, this amazing team. Thank you so much. And we'll keep up the good work, and we look forward to, what's yet to come. So thank you very much for the investment. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Ali Zoller. Ali is one of our are you 2020? 2019? 20. 21. 20. Oh, we have, this is what happens in fundraising world. Allie's one of our 2020 Women on the Rise. We recognize every year Women of Achievement. Michelle was a 2021 Woman of Achievement. Half of our team is out there planning Women of Achievement right now because we raise a lot of money at that event to also support the shelter. And Allie was one of our Women on the Rise. So we recognize young women who are on their way up, and she's already there. Allie?
Good morning. We are so honored to host this event today. REEB has had such a great experience working with the City of Columbus, just in general, with the mayor's team, always being super supportive of our work. We are grateful for that support and the partnership that we have built together. REEB has received CARES Act money during COVID with such a relief during a difficult time for everyone in our city. COVID-19 gave us a chance to really pause and figure out what we were doing well, what we weren't doing so well, and how can we do it better. Really gave us time to focus on who we are serving and how we can meet people truly where they are. Can we do that better? And we found out we can. Any new and future funding will help us elevate this work and continue to make a difference. I applaud our mayor and his team by making the commitment and to continue to invest in our city and our neighborhoods. We cannot thank you enough, your team, all of our social service agencies, and all of the support that we get throughout our city of Columbus. So with that, thank you so much. We appreciate hosting this event. And thank you, Mayor. I will bring you back up.
Thanks, Al. Thank you, Ali, again for hosting us here today and for all of our incredible partners that have joined us. The REEB Center is always, as former mayor and Tanny and Jane always said, a credible hub of hope here on the south side, and so great that we can make this historic announcement together here at the REEB Center. As you can tell, I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty excited that we're all working together to make unprecedented investments in our neighbors, knowing the shorter term, midterm crisis that many of them are facing. But I'm also excited about the fact that we collectively as a community have a moment, a short period of time, to change our trajectory. As Christie and others have said here today, back to economics 101. supply and demand. We have a supply problem with respect to housing, all types of housing. Market rate, workforce, subsidized and affordable. And that's why we as a community, I'm going to the Central Ohio Mayors and City Managers Association tomorrow. We're hosting it actually over in Franklinton, Columbus's first neighborhood, to call on the entire region to join us. We want to double the number of units coming to market every year in this region, not this city, in this region over the next 15 years. And collectively, public, private, invest $1 billion in housing. The reason these stays are so long, the reason that landlords aren't accepting different types of resources, the resources are there. They're being turned down, and our neighbors are staying. These children and these families are staying in shelter. And the long-term impact that has on a child's life, on a mother's, father's life, we can do better. And we have a great track record. As you all know, we put forth a housing issue for the first time ever as part of the city's bond package back in 2019. $50 million was overwhelmingly approved by the voters. That helped us leverage over $300 million and help us build thousands of units. Think about what we can do with $150 million, at least $150 million that I'm working with council to put on for this fall. But the city cannot be the housing provider for the region. Our brothers and sisters in Dublin and Westerville and Worthington and Grove City and Bexley, we need them. This is not sustainable. And we want to build a region where if you work here, you ought to be able to live here. Whether you teach, whether you're a nurse, police officer, firefighter, bus driver. If you work here, you ought to be able to live here and support your family. Be happy to take any questions from the press.
I guess I will go ahead and start. Olivia, I know Tucker News 1. Mayor Ginther, how long has this been in the works? Kind of talk us through the process to get to this announcement today.
Well, there are a couple of different processes. Obviously, we only more recently received the rescue plan dollars. Part of what we've talked about today is what we've invested historically in the Community Shelter Board. But the additional resources have been, Christie, would you say the last 3 to 6 months? And we wanted to make sure that they were in line with the Recovery and Resiliency Advisory Committee recommendations, both the surge funding for the shelters and, as Councilmember Favor and Council President Hardin talked about, the new additional money for human service organizations. Both of the surge funding and that money comes from the rescue plan dollars.
And if I could just ask, I'm sure you're tired of hearing this question, but talk about how the pandemic has accelerated these issues in our community.
Well, I think, quite honestly, we had a housing problem before the pandemic. I would argue we are facing a crisis now. And we're doing a great job with respect to job creation and economic development. Obviously, some pretty high-profile announcements here recently about thousands of new jobs. We're not building enough housing. So the folks that are feeling that crunch first are some of our lower wage earners and folks that have experienced homelessness more recently. So that's where this crisis has come from. But I would argue that this has been a problem that has become a crisis and will require us to do more. I think the next 10 to 15 years are going to be the most consequential for this community the rest of this century. We either will do this work, make this collective investment as a region, or there are lots of cities around America that have shown a different path. And we need to learn from them and invest in our neighbors. We'll stick around if you guys want to do any one-on-ones, but any other questions? Well, again, thank you all for joining us here today. And thank you, Michelle. Thank you for your incredible contributions. We're grateful for what you and your family has given to this community. Wish you all the very best. God bless. Have a great day.